Excellency, I greet you.
Good morning.
Hello.
Is that the Prime Minister?
Morning, how are you? 5 minutes
Good.
with you. Nice talking with you.
Likewise.
Hello, madam.
So please,
Excellency, Prime Minister. Hello.
Hello, Prime Minister Zigele. How are you?
Excuse me, just
I'm
when
fine, and you?
Yes, good. Everything is well.
Morning.
We will start now. Can you just cut your microphone when you talk, please? So we are starting.
Okay,
So
we're just greeting.
So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Chungi Frederick. I'm the co-founder of the Community of Global Leaders. I'm a political consultant, a diplomatic officer for various organizations. I author a book, and I'm also doing a PhD in political science and diplomacy. So Community of Global Leaders is a community, community-led non-profit organization operating globally with representatives in each continent with a vision to provide global leaders a platform where they can collaborate to solve major global issues by synergizing their work, their individual efforts. All of our founding members come from diverse range of academic and national background. We have regional representatives on every continent, and we work together to make a better world. So I am the director of Sub-Saharan Africa region. So Katerina, could you please introduce the topic of the webinar? Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and good morning in this sunny Sunday. My name is Ekaterina Dimitrova. So I'm one of the CGL co-founders and director for Eastern Europe. We, as my colleague Frederick mentioned, in Community of Global Leaders, we work on global challenges. So according to the latest reports, in 2017, food security was at its highest, and that was even before the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. After the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, food insecurity has been rising sharply, and according to economists in the World Food Programme, 21,000 people every day die to hunger-related issues. So we and Community of Global Leaders decided to dedicate a project and a webinar to launch a project in food insecurity today with some distinguished panels of experts and NGO leaders, former leaders from all around the world. So today we're going to start the webinar with two of our distinguished guests. So we're going to have the former president of the Central African Republic, Martin Ziguele. Thank you for coming. And then we're going to have Aminata Toure, who's also former leader of Senegal. And then we're going to break down into two panels, which are going to look into food security from a local and from a global perspective. So the first panel will cover more global perspective, and the second panel is going to cover more local perspective. And now I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Ziguele for his speech. We look forward to hearing Mr. Ziguele, so the floor is yours. Mr. Ziguele?
Good morning. Yeah, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to join you and we don't share some experience.
Please put your camera up because we don't see you. If it works.
Yeah. It's okay now?
Yeah, it's good. We don't see
okay
you
now?
We don't see you because you are on there is a sun behind you. So if you just can.
Okay. I am in Africa, so sun is always present. It's better now?
It's better.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to greet you for your invitation. And I'm very happy to talk about that problem because I think 5 or 6 years later, there was food crash in Africa. There were many problems of food in Africa, and we have seen a great mobilization around food programs, and thereafter we pass away to another problem. So I think what is important, I want to point out that what is important is to consider food problems, agricultural problems are as a very permanent and basic problem all over the world, because every day, all of us, we have to eat, we have to drink water, we have to eat foods. And it's necessary to see, to wonder if you have capacity to produce food all over the world, or where can we produce food? What are the conditions to produce food in quantity and quality enough to nourish people, and in relation with the population of each continent. So I think alimentation, food problem, agricultural problem, is the heart of development, of the survival of the world. And I think it's more important for our country to ensure food security. That is the basic stone of social security in each of our countries. So I want, before I want to ask you to be to be tolerant with my English, because it's a Francophone English. So it's not, I'm not very fluent in English, but I try to make myself understood. I have been, my father was a farmer, because in our country, 7 or 80% of population are farmers. So I was born in a rural village. I started my school, my primary school in a village, and thereafter I go to college 180 kilometers far from my parents. So I know what I have food problems, food lacks, because where we have studied, there is no organization like today in many cities, in many countries, in many schools, in many colleges. You have food program helped by donors and so and so. At the time I studied, those problems didn't, those opportunities were not available. And my parents are cotton farmers. They produce cotton, and they produce also cassava, some fruits and so on. So, but it was mainly very traditional agriculture. And now with the problems the country has met, security problems, as you put at the introduction of this seminar, with security problems in our country, we are we met for the first time. We are facing food shortages due to insecurity, but not only insecurity, it's also due to the fact that there is no very great heavy investment in agriculture in our countries, and that is the problem. So during my position as Prime Minister, I try to build economic growth on the development of agriculture. But there are many problems, because since we have no financial level near of our hands, it's very difficult to finance agriculture in a massive form in our country, because of the weakness of our budget. So it's difficult to put down a budget, fiscal and economic policy to finance agriculture very comprehensively, to help people to have food and to help people to have revenue also, because the peasants who are the majority of the countries, they have to feed themselves, but they have also to sell parts of the products to have money and to earn their life. So I think it's a battle which is running again, is going on, and we need good support to keep on our efforts to make everybody has food and have a revenue by agriculture. I have finished.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. That was great introduction. So I just want to remind everyone that after that, you can guys ask questions in the box if you like. And now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Her Excellency Aminata Tuerne. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. And please, the floor is yours. When you have less than 1 minute to finish, I'll give you a gentle reminder. Thank you.
All right, that's Aminata Toure.
Toure. Sorry, my pronunciation is bad. I apologize.
Yeah, that's an R. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon. Let me greet my brother, Prime Minister Zigele. It's nice to chair this panel with you. So I really sort of concur with what you said totally. I just would like to remind us that 60% of arable lands are in Africa. So that's very important, a very important number to keep in mind. 10.48% is in the USA, 9.22% is in India, and 8.8% is in China. I said China, which is the most populous country in the world. So we have to look at food security also as the next strategic challenge internationally. Africa, the continent I sit in, will be the continent feeding the rest of the world if we do what we need to do. So along with water, because everybody's announcing water as the next cause of the international crisis, but I would say food and arable land could be also the source of international challenges. So we have to look into food security from different angles. Maybe we should start by categorizing it, because we know that food security can range from being marginal, being shortage of food associated with anxiety, of course. It can be also insufficient food, and so on. We can also talk about food insecurity, which is, at the lowest end. And all of these situations are faced in many places, including in Africa, but also in very developed countries. It's important that we keep that in mind. In very developed countries, whether it is in the USA or China or India, we still have important group of people who suffer from food insecurity or food uncertainty. So it's not sort of a typical African problem. So it's important to know that. So how do we foresee component of food security? Of course, we talk about availability. It's important. We talk about access to food. Even how do we utilize the food? If you have to process it, what does it entail in terms of means? Do you need to cut the woods of the forest and drive your horse or your donkey kilometers to get the food fire for your footing? So utilization is also part of food security. And of course, the stability. Do you depend on raining season, or are you able to secure water throughout the year? All of that has an impact on food security. And of course, malnutrition, which means that you are not sort of getting enough of it. And all of those situations, we see them in Africa or in Senegal when I'm sitting. And when I was Prime Minister, we had to deal with all of that, because it's important that we unpack the issue so we can address it step by step. So what are the threats that we have seen to food security? Of course, one of the obvious is climate change. I'm sitting in a country which is part of the Sahel. All the north of Senegal is part of the Sahel. We've been witnessing year after year a decrease in the volume of rains, which sort of is pushing the country slowly but surely toward sort of a dry country, not to say a desert impacted country. So climate change has an important impact on food security. We do also have soil erosion that is also being seen, particularly in places dealing with minings, dealing with other sort of extraction activities. Those lands used to be arable land, and slowly they become exploited to extract mineral and so on, and the soil sort of loses its values even after the mining activities sort of ends. We also do have the issue of land development as the population increased. And as you know, there is a debate about Africa being the high fertility of Africa and whether there is a link with food security, which I don't agree at all. But we do know also that as urbanization is developing, you would have less arable lands. But that should not necessarily lead to food security, because we know that we have different ways of securing food. And we also do have globally, that's not maybe specific to Africa, but to a certain extent it is, which is the aging of farmers, because many young people are not attracted by agriculture. And we can understand that, considering that it's a very hardship type of work because it's not modernized. Young people sort of prefer somehow to go to cities and seek for their luck, as we say. So we see a population of farmers being older and older, and that is a concern. And that's specifically the case in northern countries, particularly. So that is also an issue. If you have 60% of world arable land and we don't have young people investing in agriculture, so what's going to happen? We're going to lose these lands. And as we know, we are heading into Zeleka, which is the free commercial zone of Africa. And Africa needs development, and it will invite investors to come. And those investors, of course, will invest in agriculture because we know that it can be the source of billions of dollars. But is it the plan for Africa? I don't think so. So one thing I would like to clearly state
just
is
a gentle reminder, Your Excellency.
Yes, and that's a good way of concluding my intro. Is that we do have two problems. We have a problem of food security, but the other one is not even a problem. I see it as an asset. 70% of African population is below the age of 35, and we need jobs. So do the combination of the three. Food security we need. We have a young population, 70%, and we need economic growth through agriculture. So I think that should be the main challenge of our governments, African government, and African decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this great speech. I learned a lot. It was great. Thank you so much. And now we're going to continue with our panel discussion, which is going to be chaired by my colleague Albert Becker. So he's going to introduce the panel and speakers. I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kat, and thank you very much, Her Excellencies Zingile and Her Excellency Aminata. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we're going to the global discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to the global discussion. I'm going to present Josephine Favre, who is talking about African Association for Vertical Farming. Josephine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, community of global leaders, honorable ministers, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I am so honored to be part of this conversation on a subject that means a lot to me since my early childhood. Not because I do not have enough food, I think I had enough of it. But since the age of 15, I have been supporting vulnerable families in Africa every time I went on vacation with my parents. My parents being diplomats in Switzerland, I had everything. But every time we went home, to Africa, Tanzania, the areas where I could visit. Occasionally, families had no food. So advocating causes around food security became my mission. Eradicating poverty and hunger are the first two items featured on the United Nations SDGs. And it is not just a coincidence that they are placed as the first. These are fundamental, vital, and priority to development. I could start by intensifying my discussions on farmers, smallholders or smallholder farmers, the entire agri-value chain, agribusiness in general, or the agriculture era that we are in now. I will not do that as these are vast topics, and I'm convinced that my panelist colleagues will address these in depth. The topic food security should be everyone's business. An individual is qualified to be food secure when food is safely reachable, healthy, sufficient, and can be produced continuously. This is seen as sustainable food acquisition. Unfortunately, this is not the case everywhere. In the 21st century, we still have children going to bed hungry, while others in developed countries throw away or waste food on a daily basis. This clearly shows that the values of handling food is not equally distributed or attributed around the world. If we do not find solutions or solutions linger to be implemented due to policy and bureaucracy, then we can forever meet in meetings and discussions on food security, meaning not reaching the SDGs set by United Nations Agenda 2030. Looking for solutions on food distribution is a global issue. Taking agriculture into the next level should be on the agenda of every government, allowing various stakeholders to be involved in the food production movement. Thorough education and knowledge sharing around agriculture is vital to creating awareness on food production. All stakeholders have to be included, starting from the youth. The youth, since technology and agriculture are becoming the norm, the youth should be more involved. They are more tech-savvy youth, developing an agriculture mindset. Now let's talk about agriculture. I like to play around with words. And when you look at agri and culture, it's the mindset of the youth beginning to change. Thus, developing applications, drone technologies, and artificial intelligence mechanism, thus pushing agriculture into the digital revolution. Innovation in agriculture has become smart agriculture, where vertical farming plays a really big role. The gigs, which is the Generation Z of today, love innovation. The youth who have until present ignored agriculture due to seeing the hustling of their elders are now turning to agriculture due to the innovation that is behind. This should be embraced, intensified, and promoted. The women involved in agriculture, especially in the developing countries, should be more empowered, making their daily farming activities or tasks easier by enhancing education around smart farming, allowing them to abandon the tiresome digging hoe, which is a health unfriendly tool used before the first industrial revolution. Land should be attributed to women, making them more autonomous to reach their potential as agripreneurs. Climate change, climate actions, and environmental friendly discussions should be run, trained, and enhanced on a regular basis. As droughts, heavy rains, hurricanes, and locust invasions have seriously damaged many farms, making harvesting in major areas non-existent and food becoming scarce. So education and preparing farmers on how to handle these type of challenges can result to a food secure environment. The African Association for Vertical Farming's community outreach programs enhance these trainings as mentioned. I created the association to sensitize farmers, communities, and give them an education to tackle these challenges. Only when we consciously work together towards creating a food secure mentality first, thus changing the existing paradigm of continental individualism, will we then be able to implement the solutions here mentioned to their fullest capacity. This can and may or will automatically lead us towards eradicating hunger, poverty, and moving on to the other SDGs with good conscience.
Josephine, we have 1 minute.
Thank you. COVID-19 has proven to us that food security is the priority. I do believe other SDGs are important for our development. However, they remain irrelevant when a person has to go to bed hungry, as food remains the building block of all human and living organisms. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to present to you Dennis Akin, who is from Nigeria and West Africa. Dennis Akin, the floor is yours. Dennis, your microphone is muted.
Okay, thank you, Ava. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well now.
Okay. My name is Dennis Akin. Like you rightly mentioned, I am calling in from Nigeria and West Africa, and actually from Sub-Saharan Africa. I am the founder of the Nourish Child Project, and what we do at the Nourish Child Project, it's actually to see how we can reduce the burden and also prevent the scourge of malnutrition among children, especially orphans and vulnerable children, by providing them with alternative source of food nourishment and nutrition. I started the Nourish Child Project 2 years ago after I had an experience that would definitely change my life, visiting an orphanage home. And I found out that, that experience is actually something that has now relatively grown to become what I call my calling, because of the fact that I am from, a middle-class family. I really didn't get to connect with the reality that quite a whole lot of children are actually, terribly hungry. So the statistics are all there. We can put statistics, from now till tomorrow or forever. But, having to be on the field helps us to actually drive, action and mobilize action towards solving such problems. So, for example, before my visit to the orphanage home in Nigeria, in Lagos, I know Nigeria body children work, that quite a lot of children, are malnourished and they have stunted growth, and some are practically wasted. Now, because this is an expert forum, I might not have to go into full definition of some of the terms that I'm using. But of course, when the child is said to be stunted, it practically means that the child is not growing just in relation to the child's age. The height is not, it's actually below the WHO benchmark of what the normal height of a child should be. So I visited an orphanage home as my custom is on every of my birthday, and I found out that as I visited those orphanage homes, the situation is almost like the same. Having a first-hand interaction with the children, I found out that many of them are not being well fed, they are, underfed, and they are visibly stunted. So that was how I started, just as a young person. I built a team around that, and we began to say, how can we as young persons, as non-state actor, contribute to food security for vulnerable population? So aside the fact that, we started with children in orphanage homes and children that are vulnerable who roams across the street, some without proper, some who do not have, both guardian, or some who are staying with, an uncle or staying with family relative, and, they are from impoverished and very poor households. So those are target areas. Those are our target beneficiaries and population. However, our work has further grown to see that, food security, just like Our Excellency has said, it's a global problem. So it's not just an African problem. It's just a problem that is, demographic. It's a problem that the world is trying to solve. Even, the richest country in the world has, its own challenges with feeding its people, and, having that food prevalence, that sufficiency of food for every people, for all people, it's a challenge that the world is trying to actually solve. I was reading yesterday the food security report, the Global Food Security Report that's published by, the Food and Agricultural Organization, and it gives more, urgency to our discussion, and reason why we really need to take this very, very seriously. And so, as part of those things that we do as an initiative, which is practically what I just want to talk about, is seeing that we get children and people, households who are likely, food insecure, by helping them to use sustainable gardening methods for food security. So that is what we're doing, and we have been able to scale it to a greater extent, and it's working, right? It's working. Just last week, for the children living in slum, we had a body mass index whereby a growth monitoring exercise, whereby we took the statistics of those children, and since we and since we started the sustainable gardening method, whereby we ensure that every household and for all of those orphanage communities have to grow food on their own, right? So you can just readily use materials that are available in their homes, and then you can be able to grow your food using improved seed varieties, which we got from some agricultural institutes. And so we've started that, in about 15 households, and they already have more than enough food for them to eat and augment whatever it is that they're eating. So if there's anything that, I'm going to take forward as a recommendation, is for us to look inwardly and internally into how can households begin to grow food for themselves, such that they can have more than enough, to feed themselves. And that, of course, will bring about some level of economic prosperity for citizens, and for people all over the world. Thank you.
Dennis, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting. Thank you very much. Now we're going to continue with, after the presentation of Dennis Akin, we're going to see now the presentation of the Dr. Dharamveer Singh, who is going to talk about the continent of sub-India. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Okay.
I think it's maybe his microphone is off. I don't know.
Dr. Dharamveer, the floor is yours. Can you Can you hear us?
I think we will just continue because it's not here. So let's continue.
In this case, I will let you until we are going to fix this issue of the microphone. I think we can go with the next one, and then we can come back again on the presentation of the Dr. Dharamveer. In this case, I'm going with Karen Caneza, who is an entrepreneurship of the association ADFI.
Oh, Karen is not here. She has an issues. So we can go with the question of the global electrical
Dr. Dharamveer, do you hear us?
Oh, no.
In this case, we can go with the question. We can come back after when the issue will be fixed. If someone, we had some questions on the already on the chat. I want to share. I think we can share to the other panelists. Maybe someone else want to answer as well. Her Excellency, Aminata Touré already answered, but maybe someone else want to answer the same question. Which foodstuff in your countries are least vulnerable to water shortages, or do not require lot of fertilizer? That is food for domestic consumption and export. So one of the panelists want to answer to this question as well, as Her Excellency Aminata already answered, or maybe Her Excellency Aminata Touré want to add something, maybe.
Yes, I like to say that you have to address both access to water and food security, which we don't. Even in the governmental structure, we do have Minister of Water, most of the time separated to Minister of Agriculture, and they run their own course most of the time. Yet we don't know of successful agricultural program without controlling, mastering water. Now, there is also one issue we need to really think about, is the amount of water that we use. And it speaks to, the way even we grow. We do know that in many places, there is a country that has impressed many people when it comes to agriculture. It's Israel. I don't have any political intent saying that, by the way, I'm being factual. The way they managed to win over the desert of the kibbutz must really inspire many African countries, especially those who only know 3 months of raining, during a whole year, which is the case of Senegal. So the way we want to really develop our agricultural project without factoring the mastering of water and the way we use, the most efficiently possible water is important. So that is something that we need to think about. Second, when you depend on rain, 3 months in a year, you better know how you're going to retain the falling water, which we don't do. We let it just flow and go to the sea, which is, for me, such a waste and missed opportunity. So these are also, programs that we need to think about. In Senegal, years back, we had the programs that we call, retaining water program. The whole idea was to make sure that we retain the water falling from the sky and reuse it during the dry season. But that was very basic. It can be much more sophisticated. So that are also issues that we have to deal with. And lastly, vertical agriculture is something really we need to develop in Africa. And I really enjoyed what one of my co-panelists said. A lot of people are moving from villages to cities. Africa is become to be also a urbanized space. So if we have aging farmers, we do have exodus of young people towards the cities. So who is going to feed who? So people who live even in urban cities must be feeding themselves. And we have to have a very bold program related to vertical agriculture, so people can depend on themselves even when they live in cities, in much smaller spaces, and that are really forward-looking programs that we need to think about. That's what I wanted to say.
That's great.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Amina Taweh. Thank you very much. Another panelist want to add something? Or...
Hello. Hello.
Okay, Dennis. Yes, we can hear you, Doctor. In this case, we're going to come back to the presentation of the Dr. Daranvir, and then we came back to the question. We have some question from Avni Dervish as well, and I will answer after Daranvir, of the Dr. Daranvir.
Just one second. Denis Akin, can you close your microphone, please?
One second.
Yeah, my mic is muted already. It's not from me. That's not from me.
Okay.
So shall I start or?
Dr. Daranvir, you can start.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Namaste, pranam. I don't know. Maybe morning in some of the countries.
Morning. Thank you.
Yeah, so very nice to hear you all. And really, I congratulate all of young guys, those who have taken the initiatives. And in my speech, I'll just try to give the example of our country, or India. So we also have faced these challenges during the year of 1960s and 50s, just after independence. We had a lot of problems. We were having very less food in our country. We used to import food here in our country. And there were so many problems in our country. And I think some of you must be knowing that our country, how we had actually progressed in this particular front, how we could ensure food security in our country. I think some of you must have heard about it, or you must have studied about that, how the food security could be ensured in our country. But still there are some problems, maybe with respect to food access, or maybe with respect to nutritious food availability to all the population. But still we have surplus food. And there are certain, some of the very important issues. And there were three very important issues were actually addressed in our country. The first one was high yielding varieties, and then second it was water, and third it was that nutrition, that was the fertilizer. So three were the important issues which were addressed in our country. And because of these three issues, we could have now the food production, that food grain production, about 292 million tons in our country. And this is the second populous country in the world, and we have surplus food. And that is only because of these three major factors in our country, which could ensure food security in this country. And one more thing I would like to tell you all, how this could be organized in our country. We had set up a very organizational structure of agricultural research. That is in our country, ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that is at the central level. And then we have, throughout the country, we have different institutes, we have agricultural universities. And because of this organized structure, research structure, a government invested in this particular structure, so we could ensure these three aspects could come to the farmers level, and the technologies could be adopted at farmers level. We have technologies all over the world. There is no problem about the technologies, but the problem is how to put to a particular environment those technologies. The technologies which are available in US, if that technology we brought to our country, so that how that can be used in our country, in our environment. So further research is needed, and it could be done by ICAR. So those technologies could be refined, they could be again developed here in our country, and these three issues could be addressed in our country. And because of that reason, we could have food security in our country. And one more thing I would like to tell you that is very important, that is a water management. Now in our country, what are the major projects with respect to irrigations? So that could meet out only about 40% of our area could be irrigated. And rest of that, our area, agricultural area, about 60% is rain-fed area. So in that rain-fed area, again, there are huge challenges with respect to water management. And water management in those areas, there are only left technologies are water conservation. And again, some of the speakers, earlier speakers, they had mentioned about soil erosion. So that is almost, if you do water conservation, so naturally you can stop soil erosion. And if you are controlling soil erosion, very well you can conserve water. So they are hand in hand. And if you can emphasize, if you can invest in that particular issue, soil and water conservation, so naturally you can have a good potential of having a lot of production from the rain-fed area, where you have a lot of potential in our country itself. If I quote an example, in our country, about this 60% area what we have rain-fed area, so there we can have the potential of about 500 million tons we can produce, food production can be done. So still we have a lot of potential in our country, and we have technologies, but only the problem is how to upscale those technologies to poor farmers, like the farmers in African countries. In fact, in our country also, we have a lot of areas where the farmers' socioeconomic status is very poor, and they cannot invest money, they cannot invest in infrastructure needed for the water management and needed for soil and water conservation or controlling soil erosion. So there we need to have investment from the government side, and from the government side, if there are investments for these socioeconomic poor areas, maybe.
You still have 1 minute.
Yeah. So you can have a lot of, you can ensure food security throughout the globe. And one more thing I would like to tell you here at this juncture, that these three issues, if you can give importance, like these three issues, what in the beginning I mentioned about water management and yielding varieties, and then third one is that nutrition, fertilizers. So these three issues are very important, and if you concentrate on these three issues, then naturally you can ensure food security throughout the world. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Dharamveer. Thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Dharamveer, I'm going to restart again with the question, and I think one of the question will be in your field. I think that you can answer on this. I would like to know if irrigation is not another way of solving this shortage of water issues. This question is from Christina Njani.
Yeah, definitely. I can tell you, in entire world, about 80% water is used for the irrigation. I think you must be knowing. In our country also, it is about 75% or 70% water is being used in irrigation. You please tell me where this irrigation water goes. It gets circulated. This is needed. Even if you don't use for the irrigation, where it is going to go? Can you please tell me? It is not going to create a shortage. In fact, you are spreading that water over the land, and that water again getting circulated through your system. Irrigation is not at all bad for your environment. It is good for your actually giving a proofing against your climate change. And in fact, one more thing I forgot about to tell you, the soil erosion control itself can mitigate a lot of climate change problems. A lot of climate change problems can be mitigated by controlling soil erosion. In fact, irrigation, definitely you have a lot of challenges if you use a lot of water in that, but definitely that is good, and you'll have to produce, and that gets circulated. That is not going to create shortage for the water.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dharamveer. Thank you very much. I have a question from Avni Dervishi, who is asking a question. I think this question will be better answered or if someone else wants as well to answer, but I want to ask Her Excellency Martin Zengele first, and Her Excellency to answer this question. What do you think? How the diaspora of African diaspora who is living now in Europe can, or elsewhere, or US or elsewhere in the developed countries, can help, can give the expertise to develop the country. They develop, for example, in our case, Central Africa. How can that kind of that kind of population can help the country to develop, especially in the agriculture? Her Excellency Martin Zengele?
Okay, thank you. I want to, yes, I want to point out that the problem of disponibility of lands is not the same in whole Africa. For example, in my country, we have more than 600,000 kilometers of land, but we are only 5 million people, less than the third population of Lagos in Africa or the third population of Kinshasa. So we have a great country, greater than France, Belgium, and Luxembourg together, but with 5 million people only. And we have 25 million square meters of arable land, but we use only 2.5% of this land to work in agriculture each year. So we have many land, and we have 6 months of rain in our country, but we have two problems. It's a problem of manpower, because we are not numerous. The problem of investment, modern technical of agriculture, and the problem of financing agriculture. I see the things at economic part. Agriculture as infrastructure, as education, as sanitation and health also. There are economic, has their own economic life. So we have to invest many money. And the problem we have in our countries is to have a permanent flow of financial investment. So I think diaspora, Central African diaspora in Europe, can build a link between our country and investors. Because if they are with investors, if they come together with investors to help investment in agriculture, they will create confidence. Because the main things I think in Europe, people are afraid to invest in Africa because they don't know the countries, they don't know the surroundings, they don't know the the rules, and they want to be helped. They want to be with some people, some native people who know the environment and that can help them to make profitable investment. Agriculture is investment. Health is an investment. Education is an investment. And we have to create condition of investment both for diaspora and diaspora as catalytic element for bringing other investment in Africa. We have land, we have water, we have the climate, we have the economic needs of exporting foods and also for foods in the country. And I think diaspora has many lessons to bring in our countries because they are living in our countries or industrial agriculture is very developed and they have many things to bring back to in our country. And I think this field has not been explored. If we think to diaspora, we think only to bringing money, to money transfer to help families. But I think the better way of helping the countries is to invest on agricultural assets, forest assets, environment assets, climate assets in order to build an economic environment able to feed people at a long-term development agenda.
Thank you, Your Excellency Martin Zingele. Your Excellency Aminata Toye, do you have anything to add in this question?
Yes.
In your point of view?
Yes, I totally agree with Prime Minister Zingele. I would add some of the thing that Africa needs to maybe work on if it wants to attract more investors, including those from the diaspora. Myself, when I was Prime Minister, I launched the Agro-Business National Program. But quickly we ran into one thing that was important. It was the legal status of the lands, because we have combined legal status. Some of the lands belong to traditional families, but most of the lands belong to the states. But the states doesn't sell its land. So when you are an investor, you come with your money, but you want bigger money from the bank. You don't have collateral as the land. So that is a problem that we face, and it's a serious one because Africa doesn't want to sell its land. Remember, I said that 60% of arable land in the world are in Africa. So if we are starting selling our lands, we're going to disappear. So that is not something we are looking forward to. But yet, we have to reflect on, a legal status that will bring security to those who invest. Because you don't want to start something, and we have seen many project investors come, and when the projects sort of expand, village people would stand and block the project on the valuable ground that this is their lands, and they don't want to give it for agribusiness. So that is one of the obstacles that we need to face. The second one is also working on stability of the continent. And I'm sure Prime Minister Zingele agree with me. You cannot invest in a place when the place is not stable, not only in terms of peace, but also having judicial security, making sure that if you have issues, the justice is going to work independently. So this is also issues that we have to face. So all this sort of working on stability, working for good governance, making sure that we take the good options, all of that will attract investors. So that we have to really acknowledge that and work seriously on it, so the diaspora can confidently come back home and make sure that the investment will win at the end of the day. Because many of our parents, our friends, myself, I used to be a member of the diaspora until 2012. But many of them want to come back because everybody want to age in your own country most of the time. But if you don't see a security for your investment, including your agricultural investment, which is very sensitive, maybe more sensitive than other, because you depend on one capital, which is the land. If the legal status is not there, if you're not sure that transparency is going to work for you and justice is going to work for you, it is going to be very difficult to attract investors. And as I said, we do have the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We call it ZLECA in French. It will provide new opportunity for trading and investment, and particularly in agriculture. Remember, I said that that China, which is by far the biggest country, has only 8.8%, less than 9% of arable lands, while Africa has 60. So we have to make sure that we do have the legal, protections, so we end up not being, spoiled from our main resources, which is agriculture. But it comes hand in hand with good governance, with judicial security, with transparency of the states, because even you have the land and nobody is sure that the investment is going to work for all these reasons I'm raising, nobody gonna come, including the diaspora. They would prefer to just send the checks, and invest, somewhere else. So that is something that we also have to think about. It is very, very important. But we didn't talk a lot about the social situation of farmers, because I raised the issue about aging farmers. It's across the board, everywhere. But how are we going to make sure that young people are going to be the one developing this continent? How are we going to do that? That is very important. Here in Senegal, we don't have a specific agricultural high school, which exists in many countries like France. We don't have, now we're gonna have a university that is specialized in agriculture. It's in the center of the country, but it took us 61 years to do that because we got independence in 1960. So these are things we need to accelerate if we want to make sure that agriculture is big. And agriculture, on the top of it, is the main income of most African, the majority of African people. So on these issues, you can talk for days and days, but these are important things. I like to hear from the younger folks, how do they see African young people being the main actor in the agriculture to ensure food security? That's important, because I saw in the comments that the increase of fertility, laws against abortions, which means that Africans are going to multiply themselves over and over and over again, and then they would put pressure on other countries. That's not the scenario I look forward to. That's not the scenario that we see. I do think, first of all, the battle of Africa is to be self-sufficient. Africa is still importing its food, yet 60% of the arable land is in Africa. So this is a challenge to our leaders. They have to make things right. They have to come up with the proper training from primary all the way to university, come up with agricultural high school, bring money, investment, public investment in modernizing agriculture, mastering and controlling water, as it was said. So all these issues will sort of, bring us that food security that we are still looking forward to 61 years after the independence.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aminata Touay. Thank you very much. I want just a small answer for both, for Josephine Favre, for Denise Akin, a small one. I want to ask first for Denis Akin, how do you see the future for the children in Nigeria in the COVID-19 situation? Yes, Denise, if you want to talk about the question, do both. Answer my question and come in the jump in the last question as well.
All right. So this that COVID-19 really exposed the world to is actually the need for provision of food for everyone. Now, the implication of that, we found that when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, not only in Africa, but across the world, we found that the most important thing that everybody wants to get to do is to ensure that at least there's food for people to eat. So that practically placed food as an essential need. In fact, according to Abraham Maslow, we understand that the basic human need is actually getting people to eat. So what the COVID-19 pandemic really did, number one, was to actually create more sense of urgency, and practically, people are beginning to see the need for us to actually begin to see that we have enough food, that is being grown, and of course, even in Nigeria, there's now a kind of national food group policy that it's, being developed to ensure that people are largely food secured. Now, for the vulnerable children, of course, the situation is there for them, because these persons are terribly hit. For example, I work, along the lines for children in foster care and in orphanage homes, right? During this period, it's difficult for them to actually do physical fundraising. And of course, because every other person is trying to rationalize whatever food they have for themselves and their families. So not everybody is thinking about going to orphanage homes and, trying to do items for them. And that's where we come in. That's where our intervention comes in, to ensure that these persons are not left behind, in the food drive process. So aside the fact that we do food drive, we organize food drive consistently for their homes, we also try to see that Lagos being a metropolitan city, right? For the orphanage homes, they do not have soil to grow the food that they need. So that was another challenge that we found out. So what we do is that we're using a sustainable gardening system that allows us to grow food even on concrete floors, right? So we only have to find improved food varieties of seeds, right? So these seeds actually have been biofermented, and so we approach agricultural institutes like the Institute of Tropical Agriculture.
Okay.
Then we probably survive harsh economic, weather conditions. And so we grow this food for them, different kinds of vegetables, from okra, to lettuce, to growing tomatoes, and some other things that we know will be needful. So the children can actually not only have food to eat, but have nourished food to eat in terms of providing vegetables for them. And it's been working. And, aside orphanage homes now, we have now started, reproducing this at households where they are very impoverished. That's like slum communities. And so parents, we're working directly with parents to grow food for them, at their backyard. And of course, they have reasonable food to eat now. And so that's just the current condition at the moment.
Denise, thank you very much. Just a last sentence for Josephine. Josephine, to conclude the question, and how do you see the food problem in the future? A small sentence, something to conclude the question for our part.
Well, thank you. Well, I do have the association, the African Association for Vertical Farming, which of course, it has enormously called in a lot of young Africans who are tech savvy into my inbox. I mean, my inbox is full of emails from the young generation of farmers of African. We actually have seen the movement since COVID-19, where the younger generation who really want to engage in agriculture in Africa write to us and tell us that they want to learn about what vertical farming is all about. Because most of these young people have developed applications on agriculture, drone mechanism, and all that artificial intelligence, but they don't have somebody to speak to about, because in Africa, as Her Highness Aminata Touré spoke about, is that they are older women who are actually practicing agriculture in the older version. Therefore, the younger generation are not really interested into going into agriculture in the older version, but they want to jump into agriculture in the new version in order to make sure that food security is taken care of in Africa. So what we did actually during the COVID-19, we educated online this young generation to go into their farms and to make sure that they put in infrastructures. And when we talk about infrastructure, don't be scared of the vertical farming that you see in other developing countries. We have made sure that we do vertical farming infrastructures made in Africa for the African population, so that they can be able to grow their product as fast as possible, have the threefold yield, sell the yield, and become economically independent. This has helped enormously during the COVID-19, and we are seeing more and more younger generation of Africans wanting to get into agriculture, using technology, and wanting to really make sure that they've got the funds for that. We want to open up the funds for that. We want to make sure that the startups are being taken care of this younger generation in Africa. I'm very, very active in Africa. I want to be active in Africa, and I would like to help the younger generation in Africa to be food secure and to help the African citizens to be food secure by using vertical farming technologies made in Africa by the African young generation. Thank you.
Josephine, thank you very much. Thank you. Now we're going to Anna. I'm letting the floor for Anna. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you all so much. It's been a really interesting discussion so far. A tiny little bit about me. My name's Hannah Musavi. I've started my own global governance consultancy that focuses on analysing and assessing governance structures to ensure that gender, cultural and unconscious bias can be eradicated. So it's called no, it's not. It's called Pomegranate House. So I'm involved in so many different initiatives, and one in which is called Feast. And luckily, I have one of my fellow trustees and the chair of Feast and the founder, Hannah Style. So double Hannahs. This panel will be focusing on local impact with food insecurity. So Hannah, go for it.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks, Hannah, for the warm introduction. I think we are the Hannah Squared team in the trustees, which is really lovely. So I'll just briefly introduce Feast, which stands for Feeding and Empowering Adults all sustainably together. We very recently just changed the title or the tagline because now throughout lockdown, we've been supporting all vulnerable people, including children and adults. So I'm a dietitian by background, and I set up the charity back in 2017. Before that, it was just a grassroots project supporting vulnerable people with community meals, all made from surplus food in North London. So we would collect any mushy carrot, mushy bananas, wonky peppers, any food that was going to be thrown away but was perfectly edible. You know, the one egg in the box that was cracked, meaning that the whole box had to be thrown away. We were collecting all that good food, taking it to homeless people and those attending mental health day centres, other marginalised groups, refugee groups, and we would co-create a community meal together. And it was a beautiful horizontal platform to try to engage all different parts of the community through the vehicle of food. Excuse me. So this morphed very quickly from being a once-a-month program into throughout lockdown, a 7-day service as the need has dramatically increased. I know we've spoken a lot about African countries and agriculture. Over here in the UK, we've seen an absolute horrible, devastating increase in food poverty. It's just skyrocketed, and it's a privilege that Feast has been able to do something to respond. We've turned our operations into food parcel service as opposed to community meals, because we haven't been able to dine together or prepare meals together. Obviously, the people we're supporting are vulnerable. They may have immunocompromise, they may be they may have had poor nutritional status for a very long time, and so assembling at this time would be quite risky. So we have been galvanizing the community, all the wonderful volunteers who may have been furloughed and had time on their hands to come and support us in the kitchens in as safe a way as possible throughout lockdown. And we're now supporting 4 London boroughs with food parcel services. And as we look to our strategy in the new year, or in this year, gosh, I can't believe it's already April. It's not the new year anymore. We will be looking to develop nutrition education programming to support vulnerable people not to be reliant on food parcel services, but to have the independence with their own nutrition, the volition and the dignity of choice. So we're hoping to be able to equip people with the skills, how to use surplus food, how to use what's around you with very limited resources at the lowest cost possible, and to make your own meal as healthy and nourishing and sustaining as possible. So within the charity, we have 3 objectives, which we aim to achieve with every feast that we run. So that's preventing malnutrition, promoting community cohesion, and minimizing food waste. And we do that all through using surplus foods and bringing people together, hopefully, when we're allowed to, after this difficult period of lockdown. So yeah, I would welcome anyone to have a look at our website, see what we're doing, any thoughts, ideas, any feedback. We would love to learn from you. It seems that there's going to be 2 branches to Feast, a more catering service style of provision, and this nutrition education branch, and hopefully campaigning branch, which hopefully we will develop in time. It's been a humbling journey, meeting people who really need it at this time, and working with volunteers across the board who have just been so giving of their time and their skill. The charity has grown enormously, and I couldn't ever have anticipated it. I'm sure Hannah will agree with me. At the beginning of lockdown, we really thought we were going to have to close because all the supermarkets were running out of food and the community centres were closing. And we thought, how are we going to provide a service when people really need it? You know, more than ever, people are going hungry. So it was an incredible, radical change, setting up this food parcel service and having to, you know, do a lot of fundraising in order to keep us going. And now we employ 8 incredible powerhouse women who do a fantastic job to keep the services going and flourishing, not just going, but really going places. So it's, yeah, I'm humbled, and I can't believe that this is what Feast is now. And it's been wonderful to hear from everyone else across the globe about the different initiatives and different priorities. I guess at the local community level, there are people who we are facing, who we are supporting directly, and it's obviously been really tough to see what people are going through in this awful time, and it will be like this for a long time, and there will be a need for these charities to keep going, to keep partnering, to keep working with the councils and with the government, hopefully to shape policy to support people in future to be independent of services like ours. And I'm sure colleagues around the Zoom room will agree with me that we do need to work with the government locally, nationally, to support people who are really suffering. So thank you very much. I don't know how much time I have left.
You're fine in time wise.
Okay.
I'm going to quickly go to, so I'm going to go through each one of the panel, and then afterwards we'll ask some questions for a panel discussion. So I'd like to introduce, I'm really sorry if I say anyone's names wrong, Flavin Kutak. I really do apologize if I've said it so wrong. I probably really butchered your name, but welcome to the...
Hi everyone, I am Flavien Kwacha from Cameroon.
So close.
No matter you had the right pronunciation. I'm a farmer in Douala in Cameroon, and I'm running a startup called Save Our Agriculture, where we are using, in fact, fish's excrement as a natural fertilizer to grow large volumes of food. And I'm happy to be part of this panel because about 3 years ago, we decided to fight against that challenge that smallholder farmers have in our country, like in many other countries in Africa, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where they are facing a lot of important and expensive logistics when it comes to taking just food from rural areas to commercial spaces which are most suitable in cities. So we decided to use this mode of production, and we patented some aquaponics units that are combining fishes and vegetables. Definitely, we are currently operating in Cameroon, Senegal, and Rwanda because we wanted to show how replicable is our process, and we are most definitely solving many of the challenges you mentioned before I intervene. First, about the post-harvest losses. because we are using only 10% of the water that was wasted in traditional farming. So we are producing more and more food in small spaces without using any chemical. Definitely, it's an actual solution when it comes to talking about climate change issues in our environment. Second, we are providing a solution to people from many ages. We notice that agri workers are aged around 50 to 70 years old, so they don't have enough strength to provide what is needed in the agri sector. With our solutions, even young people with no experience can have a reasonable yield in farming. And the last thing is consumer health, because we notice more than 500,000 people are dying every year after consuming contaminated food. This is why we decided to grow our food while using this mode of production with no chemical.
Thank you so much. I find it really quite interesting that so far the local projects have also had an impact regarding health, that has been a big driver, organic and health, and having a real impact with nutrition. So it's really interesting to hear both your perspectives so far. So our next speaker will be Divya Lad. Please can you introduce yourselves and welcome.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Am I audible to everyone?
You are, but you are very quiet.
Is this better?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, so good evening to everyone. Good morning to others who are joining from different parts of the world. My name is Divya, and I've been working with Indigenous women farmers as a part of one of India's oldest and largest philanthropic organizations. So now, as I begin, I just want to ask you all, so when I say the words boardroom, what image does come to your mind? Is it this image of a glass paneled room with neatly lined high back chairs in front of a large table? It's usually that's what Google throws up usually. But for young indigenous women in a remote village in Eastern India, it is their one room office where they sit on the floor in a circle. They're huddled together as board members of a farmer producer organization with 3,500 shareholders. And these board members, along with their shareholder farmers, are all a part of a region which is dubbed as the Central Indian Tribal Belt. This region has one of the largest concentrations of rural poverty in Asia. This forested area is home to around 70 million indigenous people, and despite the rich natural resources and plenty of rainfall, majority of these indigenous people here live below the poverty line, which means they do not have the minimum adequate income. And it's no coincidence that these regions also rank very high on malnutrition. It is to address these challenges that we brought around 100,000 of these indigenous women together as a part of an initiative that we call Lakhpati Kisan. Now, Kisan in Hindi means farmer, and Lakhpati, loosely translated, it means farmer, someone who earns $1,500 annually. Now, this figure is actually a threefold jump from the average income levels currently in this region. This goal of ours was directly linked to the SDG 2, which is zero hunger. A sub goal within that is 2.3, which talks about doubling agricultural productivity and incomes of small scale food producers, in particular women, indigenous people. And those are the ones that we focused on. We identified women influencers within these communities, and we trained them to be early adopters of diversifying their crops to include high nutrition, high value crops based on the local context. These influencers also expanded their activities from crops to also include livestock. Now, when I usually talk about livestock rearing, the images of these big commercial farms with thousands of cows or poultry. However, in the context of these rural women, the livestock rearing comprises of 2 or 3 pigs or 10 to 12 goats who are raised in a temporary structure in their backyard. And this provides an insurance against crop loss due to a variety of factors, and it also serves as a supplemental source of income. The success of these influencers went what we call viral, at least in the pre-pandemic days. So these influencers, their success went viral, and within their communities, we saw a large adoption of these practices. And this led to a large number of villages within the same cluster diversifying and integrating best scientific practices, being able to afford irrigation as a group. Because they were able to collectivize as a producer company, they were also able to negotiate better deals with traders for their produce. These women farmers, finally, this producer company was able to give these women farmers a voice and agency in farm planning, management, and finances. These were roles which were traditionally performed by only the male farmers, while women farmers were assigned the intensive labor activities. The board members that we spoke of earlier, they multitask from conducting performance reviews of their field staff to planning for the upcoming sowing season to walking a couple of miles to audit construction of newly constructed solar-based irrigation structures. Thousands of such boardrooms are coming up across rural India. However, while I paint this hopeful picture, there's still a lot that remains to be done. As we speak, there are thousands of farmers who have been protesting in our capital, New Delhi, since early this year against imposition of a hastily passed farm laws. Climate change is hurting these smallholder farmers the most. These farmers who contributed the least to it. We've seen that with droughts, with unseasonal rains, which have destroyed produce during harvest season, with locust attacks, which have ravaged crops across Africa and Asia. At the local level, not all families experience success in the first attempt. Not all areas have existing market linkages to be able to sell these agricultural products. Not all local governments are receptive to these changes in approaches. So we're trying to adapt and course correct to these new realities as we go along. And we hope that these successful models can be scaled up with government support and they can be customized as per the local context. We hope that over the next couple of years, the indigenous women farmers that we work with are able to independently innovate and adopt technologies to keep with the transitions in the agriculture sector. Our biggest indicator of success would be when we're not needed anymore. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very insightful and very interesting. I've got a few questions that I've written down so far, but we've got one person left on the panel, and then it will be an open discussion. So I'd like to also, again, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, but Dr. Ikich Agbagba. I'm really sorry. I know I've just ruined your name. Please introduce yourself.
No problem. My name is Dr. Ikechi Agbagba, and I am a trained agroeconomist. I trained here in Africa, and I just returned from England. And I'm a university professor, and at the same time, I champion a lot of international networking volunteer organizations in Africa. And I entered into this agriculture profession, not like any Nigerian youth. I'm sure if you're a Nigerian here, you will agree with me that, and also Africans, that just like Her Excellency pointed out, that most youths gravitate towards the oil and gas sector, the medical profession, and other professions that are, aside of, well, that's the perception problem with our youths here in Africa, because of they feel that agriculture is, and agribusiness is like a business as usual. They don't know that a scientific and technologically driven agriculture is, taking place now with the advent of fourth industrial revolution. So I do lots of, I champion lots of initiatives around ECOWAS region, SADC region, Eastern African region, and Northern African region. You will ask me how I do that. Maybe that will be for another day. Well, I have a slide which I want to share, and I believe I was given access earlier to share my slide. And this topic about global food security is a topic that touches my heart a lot. It's I hope my slide is showing now. Okay, yeah. If it can show, okay, just let me know.
It's on.
It's on.
Okay. Yeah. So well, I have been all my researches that I've
Sorry,
carried out.
just to remind you, we've got 6 minutes of this presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was saying that all my researches have all been, directed towards food security. And just like the previous speakers have already pointed out, and I reckon to that, that food security has 4 pillars. The first pillar is availability. If food is available, then that takes us to the second pillar. Can it be assessed? If food can be assessed, how can it, that takes us to utilization, which is the third point, the third pillar. And if it can be utilized, how then can it be sustained? That is stability, the fourth.
Hello? I think we'll just wait a minute.
And permit me to say that many countries in 4 pillars. I was discussing with a farmer the other, most of the places in the US, they have already attained the 4 pillars. So he said, no. I said, but how can you compare Africa? Has Africa attained the first and second pillar? Not to talk of that, So, and, it's, it really behoves on us as policy makers to understand this fact, that global population will definitely increase to about 9 billion persons during the next 4 decades. Food security has determined the history of mankind. And that takes us to, the point I had earlier raised, which is food security. Now, there are factors that affect food security: population growth, climate change issues, increasing cost of food, unemployment, poverty, loss of biodiversity. And you can even see there are some, like I had to bring out this diagram as well, because it has a primary and a secondary aspect to food security, how to increase food production. It will baffle us that many persons are so food insecure that you cannot imagine. They are so food insecure that there's no food available, not to talk of accessing food. And even during the pandemic, it was hell in many African communities, and even other developing economies. Well, because of time, I had to, highlight on the role of government. We all know that the government has a very strategic role to play. Like even in the US, I reckon that in the that the USDA was helping lots of their farmers in the. They ensured that food was going around in the US, and also even in the United Kingdom as well. There was lots of subsidies given. And then what of the role of private the role of non-governmental organization, which are investors? We need to encourage private investors. There's an initiative I belong, and it's an European, which is based in Germany. It's called Green Label Initiative. Encourage the smallholder farmers to, channel to, secure more funding and more interventions for farming, and also create more access for people to eat food, and secure food. So, and we can see the global state of food security as well. Yeah, so wrapping up now, I had to bring out solutions to global food insecurity. This is the age of climate smart agriculture, which has already been pointed out by my friend Josephine. And also responding to forced migration, fostering gender equality, reducing food waste, disaster risk reduction, supporting hygiene and sanitation, controlling infestations and crop infections, enhancing crops with biofortification. So it is high time, and I believe that food can actually be secured in some of our nations. We need to be very proactive about this matter. We need to be very proactive, even as youths, even as a community of global leaders. We need to be very proactive. Food, among the 3 basic necessities of man, food is very important. And for my students, I have always told, developed a concept I call brain re-engineering, trying to change the face of agriculture, trying to change their perception. And most people are now coming back to agriculture. That is a very good thing that is happening. Most people, medical doctors, they're approaching me. We were talking about this as well, trying to come into Africa and bring in technology, not just foreign aid, but also engage with foreign trade. That is where African Continental Free Trade Area comes in. They are developing a legal framework on how to help, champion this actually. So I believe, within this few minutes, I've already made some very crucial points on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really find it interesting that throughout both the global and the local discussion and statements, there are so many key factors here that that are in line with one another. So while you had mentioned in your presentation about the sustainability aspect, it's key that what should we stop? Sorry, it's key that actually we need to actually be sustainable. We do have an abundance of food in the world, and we can see that the viable land to grow it will be in Africa. But we can see everywhere in the UK, in India, in all of Africa and everywhere in the world, there is still such an insecurity within food. And it's not fair. It's, there is a definite capitalist way of thinking about food. There is selfishness that we can see. People have food in abundance and chuck it away. Feast uses surplus foods, and that's just the supermarket. We've got so many different elements of the production line, starting from farmers all the way down to even our own households, that chuck away food in such high quantities. So we do need to make this far more sustainable, and perhaps it needs to be from bottom up. We need to make a difference at home all the way through. So one of my questions is going to be to this whole panel, and also any of the other ones from the global panel and the ambassadors for this. So while we have spoken about food, health, climate change, and sustainability, enough is not actually allocated to the groups that need it. This could potentially get worse, and we know it will get worse due to climate change, due to how trading has been and what we can predict to be even within the next 4 to 10 years. And if any of you people were not doing what you're doing, all the communities that you are helping would not have food. So firstly, congratulations for having such a massive impact in the world. But also, what do you think can be made to make this sustainable? What should change from a local perspective and a global perspective? The floor is open.
I'll put my hands up for the moment, just 2 seconds. I do believe that we have such long processes in it's just processes and bureaucracy that is so long until the food is reached in an area that is really, really needed. Until a process is already done, the people probably have died of hunger. I think that if governments are taking care of these processes, they have to be shortened so that the people can be able to actually practice, whether it is on education, training, because we do sometimes have to wait months for something to be approved in order for us to train a local area. And then during this time, I do believe people are able to put their act together and feed their communities. So processes from wherever they're going to come from, organization or governments, they have to be shorter so that people can practice what we are teaching. And this happened during the COVID-19, where we were teaching a lot of people. At the end of the day, we had to wait for the fundings before that we could start. And sometimes you are with vulnerable communities who are literally dying, and they're not able to get any food, but they have to wait for organization A, B, C, D to approve so that we are able to teach them. So most of the time, we funded these communities ourselves so that they're able to teach. And that is not acceptable.
Yeah, also to add to what she just said, can I say that we need to understand what knowledge transfer, just like Josephine mentioned about knowledge sharing. There's what we call knowledge transfer, not just to bring in aid to these vulnerable communities. We need to like for this African Continental Free Trade Area, lots of developed nations that have been trading with Africa became afraid with respect to what they have been gaining over time. Can you imagine that there was a time that most African nations prospered? Their GDP, the agriculture sector contribution to the gross domestic product was actually very, big. But there was neglect of the agriculture sector, and the Asian tigers came and borrowed oil palm seedlings, for example. They didn't just borrow our oil palm seedlings, they went with some other commodities. And when I traveled to Malaysia, I was stunned that most of the, oil palm trees that I saw there on my way to Singapore, I was dazed. I was like, wow. So oil palm trees can actually thrive in these areas and also do very well, disease-free, I mean. So, and these are two continents, Asia and Nigeria and Africa, that have enjoyed the two interventions of green revolution. Now, if we can engage, if we can encourage foreign trade, and also with respect to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which is telling us now that we need to encourage multinational companies and also agro companies, international companies, to come and set up their factories in Africa. And then it will help to create jobs for the youth, help to create lots of jobs for the jobless, and also bring about interventions in other areas, which definitely will have poverty to a reasonable extent. And then, just like Morocco was able to, in Morocco, they set up automobile companies. And that's why Morocco's economy is doing much better than most of the other sub-Saharan African countries, the 54 or 55 countries of sub-Saharan Africa. So now we need to understand this and now encourage trade and then encourage value addition. Strengthen building up of factories. What is our value chain like? Our value chain, it is very important that we encourage our farmers, and we know that the farmers of Africa are smallholder farmers. Very, very much. Some of them are also championing, and people think that smallholder farmers are not powerful. They are very powerful. Go and look at the statistics of their contribution to economic transformation of Africa, and you will attest to that fact. Thank you.
At the local level?
Yes, I like to.
Okay, so we've got three people now.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, at the local level, especially for our initiative that actually works directly with local people, just similar to what Hannah Style is doing by helping vulnerable, populations, especially children and adults, to actually have access to food, but not just food, but nutritious food, and also to have that, social connection, that social cohesion aspect is also very needed, so that these people can build, resilience. Now, I think that obviously in Africa, one of the major obstacles and challenge that we face is that political will, right? So, like Her Excellency said, we have land, right? We have arable land, and we have the largest when it comes to, the proportion in the world. We have human resources. We have young and vibrant, youth population, that if there is considerable incentive from, our governments, these young people would actually, you will be surprised at the level of innovation and the expertise that they bring to the table to redefine, agricultural challenges. But, political will remains a challenge, especially with, the African continent and the leadership. And you find that food issue, insecurity, or, nutrition problem are systemic issues, right? So if we really want to solve these challenges, it's just about going to the root cause. Because when you're trying to, provide access to food to people, and these persons, are very, very poor. They are very, very, they do not even have education. Then when you're trying to solve the issue of food insecurity, you find out, the problem of education staring at the face. You find out the problem of empowering women. Otherwise, if you provide food, for children, for example, you find out that some of these some parents or some of these persons in this community, especially if you work in the development space, there is this level of resentment that comes with it, because they sometimes, if you're not careful, they feel like you have all the aids, all the funding, and you're just trying to use them, to actually empower yourself, or for the sake of your organization. Then you find out that there's also health challenges that you have to deal with. So if you have given a family food to eat, what about lingering health issues that they have? And your question, Hannah, it's more about how do we sustain this, right? So there must be economic models to sustainability plans. So for example, when we what we usually do, as bridging the gap for our vulnerable populations, is to help them with that quality seed, right, that they can plant. And even for children in foster care, children in orphanage homes, will help them to be part of the planting process, just like Dr. Ikechi once mentioned. So the children, by doing this, their self-esteem is built, and then they have this interest in agriculture at an early age. So we have children 5, 6, 7 who grow the food that they need. They know how to water it, they know how to plant, they know how to grow the seed so that it hits towards sunlight, and they take responsibility for this. But aside that, we cannot continue to give them food every day. That's why we have shifted from just food drive during the pandemic period to say, how do we sustain this? How do we ensure that these homes can have food all year round? So what we did was that we have several vegetables. We know vegetables that are likely going to, depending on the seasons that we have, that are likely going to grow, especially given the fact that our concentration has been, on the seed. The seed can withstand, climate harshness and weather and drought and all of that. So after we have been able to help the orphanage home or those communities to have, very, very huge farm yield, then we take it to the local market and then ensure that we sell for them so that they can get enough money to then purchase other seeds, and then the cycle can go like that. So aside the fact that we're giving them seed, we're also helping them to have access to market, right? So that we help them put the fresh vegetables in grocery stores so that they can raise enough money, and that money can help sustain that process. And that's why we've been able to cover a large majority of orphanage homes in Lagos State, and then we're now going from communities to communities and empowering them as well. So there's the need for us to drive, political will, that action, to ensure that the government are held responsible, right? And so let me just end up by saying this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigeria, for example, had a lot of foreign aid that came in. A lot of food supplies came into the country, but you find out that the warehouses where these foods are stored, even while in the face of hunger, those persons who manned it, Dr. Ikechi would be an example to this. They didn't release the food to the beneficiaries. So there was an imposed lockdown. So people cannot go out, they cannot go about their day-to-day operations, they cannot get income, yet the food in the warehouses are just there wasting away, and they didn't even distribute to the people. It was when there was a crisis, an upsurge, right, that the NSAS protest started, that people started looting warehouses. And you find, tons of foods in their thousands that were kept and stored, even in the face of poverty, in the face of, dire hunger in the land. So the people had to troop in and were getting and amassing the food that they need to get for themselves. And so this is just for our political leaders and, for those of us that work in the aspect of policy, there's that need for us to actually ensure through open data. So one of the things that we're doing, we're partnering with similar youth organizations to see that we have open data, such that when there are foreign aids like this, and so that when there are money, especially that has to address, the lingering problem of food, that we can actually track and monitor how this aid gets to the government and ensure that the people, the government are accountable to the people. So because if the people are not aware of this aid, if they are not aware of what multilateral organizations are doing to actually help them have access to food, especially even the African Development Bank, if the people are not aware, you just see that some persons out there are, impoverishing the people more. Some persons out there are keeping this for themselves and their family. So there's that need for us to get government accountable, in our local community. And there's the need for us to track it, and there's the need for us to now stand, the civil society and people who work in the development stage, they are the third estate, of governance. They need to ensure that, the people who actually need this resources, that they actually get there. It could be tough, it could be life risky, but that's what we've just got to do for the sake of, our constituency, the sake of these vulnerable people that need to be properly fed.
I do completely agree with you. And I do think that I know Her Excellency Aminata Toure and Flavian, I'm sorry, also wanted to give input. So I really would like the discussion to be, thank you so much, Dennis, because that was really good and it was really insightful as well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the local level because it's very important to update our local farmers on what is being done in the world. From my perspective, I notice how important it is, especially with COVID-19, to work on a collective way and think about working together as we are trying to solve those challenges for everyone. But I think we should act on education first, because before being farmers, those people are in school, they are children, and those children and those farmers, those people who are becoming adults and farmers, are not aware enough about stakes, about the word stakes and challenges at the end. So it's very important to tell them how important it is not only to be a farmer for me, but also to solve the world challenges. So I think we need to act on education first, and then to have a lot of sensibilization, make them aware about the challenges we have every day.
Thank you so much. Her Excellency Aminata, would you please give your input as well? You're still muted for the moment.
Yes, as my final comment, I think we have to, and it was said by many of the co-panelists, Africa has to ensure its food independence, I would say. That's where your independence starts. I mean, you cannot claim to be economically, socially, culturally independent if you cannot feed yourself. So that's the first one. It requires that agriculture become the priority of the priority. Second, I think it's important that commodity-dependent countries that suffer, regular trade shocks, as we have seen it during the pandemic, need to take this issue very seriously, the issue of food security and food independence. The other thing that was also raised, and I really agree with that, is that we have to make sure that we have social protection programs that ensure food availability to the most vulnerable as a matter of human rights. I think we didn't say it enough, but access to food is a human right that needs to be realized by all people, regardless of where they live, whether they are men or women, how they look, their race, etc. So I think that is also important to always assert that. We know that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will bring a lot of opportunities, but we have to make sure, and it was said, that it's a win-win situation, and that farmers will continue to exist. We don't turn them into agricultural labors. And that required some fine tuning in terms of, how investors are going to make sure that they're going to increase productivity, but at the same time, they will train farmers, they will subcontract farmers, and agriculture, which is also, I think that Ms. Fabre who said it's agri and culture. So there is a culture of farming that needs to be preserved, that needs to be also modernized, so people continue to live in where they live, and they have a dignifying life. So that is very, very important. I think to come back now to the core issue, I think it's important also to have nutrition sensitive approaches. We talk about food, but nutrition is also something important that we need to talk about. And it has to be on a multi-sectoral basis. We have to focus on promoting nutritional sensitive food system, and that is very important. How are we going to make sure that we feed the school kids, the families with product from Africa, and with the way, because I'm kind of concerned with now the coming of many fast food and bad food, and we're seeing also the phenomena of obesity of children among the African middle class. That is also something that we are seeing. So when we talk about nutrition, it's also important that we do that. We have to have specific program on processing, distribution, and all of that have to be linked particularly to maternal and child health, so we can address maternal and child malnutrition, which is one of the issues we are still dealing with. I think we have to look into food security, not only as a moral issue, but also as a human right. That was my conclusion. Thank you for this invitation, and I think you have my encouragement to carry on this very important issue. You're the next generation of leaders coming in, so it's important that you raise these issues and recall them to those who are sitting in the seat. But you're going to be the next one, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your input, and thank everyone on the panel. Hannah and Divya, thank you as well for being on this panel. I would like, I only said them two in particular because there was not much input afterwards, but you gave so much in your presentation that clearly it stimulated the rest of the discussion. So I'll just hand it over to Abby to finish, but thank you again for everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. At the end of our webinar, I would like to thank His Excellency Martin Zugule. It was an honor to have you in our webinar, sir. I would also like to thank Her Excellency Aminata Toure. Ma'am, it was an extreme honor to have you here. I would also like to thank our global discussion panelists, Josephine Favre, Dennis Akin, Dr. Dharamveer Singh. I would like to thank him especially to Dr. Dharamveer Singh, has even been suffering with COVID vaccine severe side effects. He still confirmed his availability in the webinar. Thank you so much for your time, sir. I would also like to thank our local discussion panelists, Flavin Koacha, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Divya Lad, Hannah Style, Dr. Ikechi Agbugba. Your precious knowledge have helped us in gaining deeper insights of global food security, and we believe we can work together in future to solve this global issue. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to see you all in our next webinar. Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye to everyone. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.